Jake Martinez stood at the edge of the landing platform, staring up at the massive towers of the Galactic Defense Academy. The buildings stretched high into the purple sky of Nexus Prime, their metal surfaces gleaming under the light of twin suns. Ships from dozens of worlds landed and took off around him, carrying cadets from every corner of the galaxy. He adjusted the strap of his duffel bag and took a deep breath. The air tasted different here, metallic and sharp. Everything was different from Earth. The gravity felt heavier, the sounds were strange, and he could smell scents he had never experienced before. A group of towering reptilian beings walked past him. Their scales were dark green and black, and their eyes glowed yellow in the alien sunlight. They moved with the grace of natural predators, each one easily 8 feet tall. Jake recognized them as Vorthak warriors from the Academy files he had studied during the long journey from Earth. One of them noticed him staring and stopped. The creature looked down at Jake with obvious disgust. "Look what we have here," the Vorthak said in perfect standard galactic. His voice was deep and rough, like gravel grinding together. "A little pink creature. Must be lost." The other Vorthak gathered around, forming a circle. Jake felt very small, surrounded by their massive forms. "I am not lost," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am a cadet. Jake Martinez from Earth." The Vorthak, who had spoken first, threw back his massive head and laughed. The sound was like rocks falling down a cliff. "Earth," he said, spitting the word like it tasted bad. "The weak world. The planet of soft creatures who break when you touch them." "I heard they accepted a human this year," another Vorthak said. "I thought it was a joke. The Galactic Council must be getting soft too." Jake felt his face burn with anger and embarrassment. He wanted to say something back, but the words stuck in his throat. These creatures could tear him apart without effort, and they all knew it. "What is your name, little Earth creature?" the first Vorthak asked. "Jake Martinez," Jake repeated. "I am Commander Thex," the Vorthak said. "And you, Jake Martinez from Earth, are going to be my roommate." The other Vorthak laughed again. One of them patted Thex on the back with a hand the size of a dinner plate. "Good luck keeping him alive, Thex," the Vorthak said. "Try not to roll over in your sleep." They walked away, still laughing. Jake stood alone on the platform, his hands shaking slightly. He had known this would be difficult, but he had not expected it to start so soon. The Academy Processing Center was a chaos of different species. Jake saw the insect-like Kythera with their multiple arms and compound eyes. He watched massive ursine cadets that looked like walking bears, their fur thick and their claws sharp. There were species he did not recognize, creatures with tentacles and others with crystalline skin that caught the light. All of them were bigger than him. All of them looked stronger, and all of them stared at him like he was some kind of strange animal. Jake got his room assignment and academy schedule from a bored-looking clerk. The creature had blue skin and too many fingers, but it spoke standard galactic well enough. "Room 847, level 12, the clerk said without looking up. "Your roommate is already there. Try not to die on your first day." The elevator to level 12 was crowded with cadets. Jake pressed himself into a corner, trying to avoid being stepped on. A group of Kythera were talking in their clicking language, their compound eyes occasionally turning toward him. He caught enough of their conversation to understand they were discussing him. "Prey species," one of them clicked. "No natural weapons, no armor, no speed." "Why did they even accept it?" another asked. "Politics," the first one replied. "The humans have some influence in the outer sectors. This is probably just for show." Jake kept his eyes on the floor. He had heard similar things during his journey here, but it still hurt. Earth was new to the galactic community, and humans were not considered a warrior species. Most aliens saw them as weak traitors and diplomats. Good for making deals, but not for fighting. Room 847 was larger than Jake had expected. There were 2 beds, 2 desks, and a small common area. One side of the room was already occupied. Thex had spread his belongings across his bed and desk. The Vorthak was sitting on his bed, which creaked under his weight, reading something on a data pad. "So you found your way here," Thex said without looking up. "I was hoping you would get lost and save us both some trouble." Jake set his bag on the empty bed. It felt strange and uncomfortable, designed for beings much larger than him. "I am not going anywhere," Jake said. Thex finally looked at him. The Vorthak's yellow eyes were cold and calculating. "Listen, human," Thex said. "I do not know what strings your species pulled to get you here, but this is the Galactic Defense Academy. We train the galaxy's elite warriors. We learn to kill enemies of the galactic peace. We become the sharp edge of civilization." He stood up, towering over Jake. His shadow covered the human completely. "You are not a warrior," Thex continued. "You are barely even a proper predator. Your species evolved from prey animals. You have no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. You are slow and weak. The only reason you are here is politics." Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Maybe you are right," Jake said. "But I passed all the same tests you did to get here." Thex laughed, the same grinding sound Jake had heard on the landing platform. "Tests," Thex said. "Written tests and basic physical requirements. Wait until tomorrow when the real training begins. Wait until you face a real warrior in combat." The Vorthak sat back down on his bed, which groaned under his massive frame. "I give you 3 days before you quit and run back to your soft little world," Thex said. "If you survive that long—" Jake unpacked his belongings in silence. His hands were steady now, and his jaw was set with determination. He had not come this far to be scared away by threats and insults. Outside the window, the twin suns of Nexus Prime were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Tomorrow would bring his first day of training at the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy. Jake Martinez from Earth was ready. Jake woke up before dawn to the sound of Thex sharpening his claws on a metal file. The scraping noise was like nails on a chalkboard, designed to annoy him. Jake had learned after 3 weeks that Thex did many small things to make his life difficult. The first combat trial was scheduled for today. Jake had been dreading it since he arrived at the academy. He rolled out of bed and began his morning routine, trying to ignore the sound of metal on claw. "Ready for your humiliation, human?" Thex asked without looking up from his claws. Jake did not answer. He had learned not to engage with Thex's daily insults. Instead, he focused on getting dressed in his training gear. The academy uniform was designed to fit many different body types, but it still hung loose on his smaller human frame. The training ground was a massive arena with different environments. One section had rocky terrain like a mountain. Another area was filled with thick jungle plants. A third zone was covered in deep sand like a desert. Cadets would fight in whichever environment the instructors chose. Jake joined the other first-year cadets in formation. There were about 50 of them from 20 different species. He was the only human. As always, he felt the stares and heard the whispered comments. Instructor Battlemaster Korth stepped forward. The massive Ursine stood nearly 10 feet tall, his brown fur marked with scars from countless battles. His voice boomed across the training ground. "Today you face your first real combat trial," Korth announced. "You will fight one-on-one against another cadet. No weapons except what nature gave you. No mercy. No holding back. Fight until one of you cannot continue." Jake's stomach twisted into knots. He had been preparing for this, but he knew it would be brutal. The other cadets were all natural predators with claws, fangs, armor, or other advantages. He was just human. "First match," Korth called out. "Jake Martinez versus Razor." The other cadets made excited noises. Razor was a Kythera, one of the insect-like species. He was about Jake's height but had 4 arms, compound eyes that could see in all directions, and chitin armor covering his body. His movements were lightning fast. Jake walked to the center of the arena. The environment selected was the rocky mountain terrain. Sharp stones jutted up from the ground, and the footing was uneven and treacherous. Razor chittered something in his native language that made the other Kithara laugh. Jake did not need a translation to know it was an insult. "Begin," Korth commanded. Razor moved faster than Jake thought possible. The Kithara's forearms struck like pistons, hitting Jake in the chest, shoulder, and ribs almost simultaneously. Jake stumbled backward, pain shooting through his body. Jake tried to grab one of Razor's arms, but the insect-like cadet twisted away with inhuman flexibility. Razor's compound eyes tracked every movement Jake made, making it impossible to surprise him. Another flurry of strikes sent Jake sprawling across the rocky ground. Sharp stones cut his hands and knees. He could taste blood in his mouth. The other cadets were cheering for Razor. Jake heard Thex's voice above the others, laughing at his pain. Jake got back to his feet, but Razor was already moving. This time the Kithara used his legs as well, delivering a kick that sent Jake flying into a boulder. The impact knocked the wind out of his lungs. "Stay down, human," Razor chittered. "Save yourself more pain." Jake struggled to stand. His vision was blurry, and his ribs ached with every breath. But he forced himself upright. He would not quit. He would not give them the satisfaction. Razor came at him again, all four arms striking in a complex pattern. Jake could not block them all. Punches landed on his face, stomach, and arms. He felt his lips split and tasted more blood. But this time, Jake did not go down. He absorbed the punishment and stayed on his feet. Between the strikes, he managed to land a single punch to Razor's midsection. It did little damage to the armored cadet, but it surprised him. The fight continued for 10 more brutal minutes. Jake was beaten and bloodied, but he kept getting back up. Each time Razor knocked him down, Jake found a way to rise again. Finally, Instructor Korth called for the match to end. "Enough," the Ursine announced. "Winner, Razor." Jake collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. His face was swollen, his ribs were bruised, and cuts covered his arms and hands. But he had lasted longer than anyone expected. The other cadets were quiet now. Some looked at Jake with something that might have been respect, but most still seemed to view him as entertainment. Later that day, Jake sat alone in the medical bay. The automated healing machines had fixed his cuts and reduced the swelling, but everything still hurt. He was staring at his hands when someone sat down beside him. "Not bad for your first real fight." Jake looked up to see an older human man in instructor's uniform. He had gray hair and scars on his face that the medical machines had not erased. His nameplate read General Kane. "I lost," Jake said. "Yes, you did," Kane agreed. "But you kept getting up. That matters more than you think." Kane was the only other human at the academy. He taught advanced tactical theory and had been here for 15 years. Most cadets respected him, though Jake had heard some whisper that he was only an instructor because humans were not good enough to be warriors. "Why did Earth send me here?" Jake asked. "Everyone thinks it was just politics." Kane was quiet for a long moment. 20 years ago, humans were not considered weak, Kane said finally. "We were feared. But that knowledge has been forgotten by most of the galaxy." "What do you mean?" "I mean that humans have advantages other species do not understand. We heal fast. We adapt quickly. We never give up. And we can endure pain that would break other minds." Kane stood up to leave. "Your real training starts now, Jake, not the classes. They teach everyone. I will meet you in training room 7 after evening meal. Come alone." That night, Jake found training room 7 in the basement of the academy. It was smaller than the main training areas and looked like it had not been used in years. Kane was waiting with old training equipment and books written in Earth languages. "What the other instructors teach is basic combat," Kane explained. "What I am going to teach you is how to fight like a human, how to use advantages you did not know you had." Jake looked at the strange equipment and ancient books. "What kind Of advantages? Kane smiled grimly. The kind that built an empire on Earth before we reached the stars. The kind that let human hunters track prey for days without stopping. The kind that made other predators afraid of the small, weak creatures who refused to die. Jake picked up one of the books. It was written in English and titled Persistence Hunting, The Lost Art of Human Warfare. Are you ready to learn what it really means to be human? Kane asked. Jake nodded. His real education was about to begin. Jake had been training with General Kane for 3 months in secret. Every night after regular classes, he would slip down to Training Room 7 to learn ancient human fighting techniques. His body was getting stronger and his mind was sharper. But the other cadets still saw him as weak. During morning formation, Jake noticed something different. The instructors seemed nervous, checking their data pads more often than usual. Even Battlemaster Korth, who never showed emotion, appeared. Restless. What is happening? Jake whispered to the cadet next to him. A crystal-skinned being from the outer rim. Have you not heard? The cadet whispered back. Kral the Endless is coming to the academy. Jake felt his blood turn cold. Every being in the galaxy knew that name. Kral the Endless was the most feared bounty hunter in known space. He had never failed a mission. He had never been defeated. No one even knew what species he was, as he always wore full armor that covered his entire body. Why is he coming? Here? Jake asked. To observe the final combat trials, the crystal-skinned cadet replied. He sometimes recruits cadets for special missions. The news spread quickly through the academy. By lunchtime, everyone was talking about Kral's visit. The older cadets shared stories they had heard about the legendary hunter. I heard he once tracked a target across 17 different worlds, said a Vorthak from the second-year class. My uncle saw him fight once, claimed an Ursine cadet. He took down 6 armed criminals without using any weapons, just his bare hands. They say he can see in complete darkness and track a scent that is weeks old, added a Kithara scout. Jake listened to all the stories with growing fear and excitement. Part of him wanted to meet the famous hunter. Another part hoped Kral would ignore him completely. That evening in Training Room 7, General Kane seemed unusually serious. So you heard about our visitor, Kane said as Jake practiced his striking forms. Everyone is talking about Kral, Jake replied, throwing a punch at the training dummy. Do you think he will really recruit someone from our class? Kane stopped Jake's training and looked at him carefully. Jake, there are things about Kral that most people do not know, things that might surprise you. What do you mean? I cannot say more right now, but I want you to be ready for anything. Your training is about to be put to a real test. The next morning, a sleek black ship landed at the academy. It was unlike any vessel Jake had seen before. The hull seemed to absorb light, making it difficult to look at directly. No markings or symbols decorated its surface. The entire academy gathered in the main courtyard to welcome their famous visitor. Jake stood with his classmates, trying to see over the taller cadets around him. A ramp lowered from the black ship. Heavy footsteps echoed across the metal surface. Then Kral the Endless appeared. He was tall, maybe 7 feet, wearing armor that looked like it was forged from starlight. The suit was smooth and flowing, with no visible joints or seams. His helmet had a dark visor that revealed nothing of the face beneath. When he moved, it was with the grace of a predator and the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Battlemaster Korth stepped forward to greet him. Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy, Kral the Endless. We are honored by your presence. Kral's voice came through speakers in his helmet. It was deep and mechanical, impossible to identify. I am here to observe your final trials, Kral said. I have heard this year's class is interesting. Jake thought he heard something strange in that last word, but he could not be sure. The final combat trials were scheduled for the next day. Unlike the practice matches Jake had fought before, these would determine class rankings and future assignments. The best fighters would be selected for elite units. The weakest would be sent to support roles far from any real action. Jake knew he would be fighting for more than just rank. He would be fighting to prove that humans belonged at the academy. The night before the trials, Jake could not sleep. He lay in bed listening to Thex sharpen his claws, as the Vorthak did every night, before a big fight. "Nervous, human?" Thex asked without looking up. "No," Jake lied. "You should be. Tomorrow you face real warriors, not practice dummies, not training exercises, real combat with real consequences." Jake rolled over and tried to ignore his roommate. "I wonder what Kral will think when he sees you fight," Thex continued. "Maybe he will be amused. A weak little human pretending to be a warrior." Jake closed his eyes and tried to remember everything General Kane had taught him. The breathing techniques, the way to read an opponent's movements, the human ability to endure pain and keep fighting when others would quit. The combat trials began at dawn. The entire academy gathered in the main arena. Kral sat in a place of honor next to Academy Director Voss, an ancient being whose species Jake did not recognize. The first few matches were between upper-class cadets. Jake watched carefully, studying their techniques and weaknesses. Every fighter was skilled and dangerous. Every movement was precise and deadly. Then it was time for the first-year trials. Jake's name was called third. His opponent was Brutus, an Ursine cadet, who stood nearly 9 feet tall. Brutus had thick brown fur, massive claws, and muscles that looked like they could crush stone. "This should be entertaining," Jake heard one of the instructors say. Jake walked to the center of the arena. The environment selected was an open plain with scattered rocks and patches of tall grass. No advantage for either fighter. Brutus cracked his knuckles, a sound like breaking wood. "I will try to make this quick, little human," Brutus said. "No need to suffer." "Take your time," Jake replied, settling into the stance General Kane had taught him. "I am not going anywhere." From the corner of his eye, Jake noticed that Kral had leaned forward in his seat. The legendary hunter was watching intently. "Begin," announced Battlemaster Korth. Brutus charged like a landslide. His massive fists swung in wide arcs that could shatter bones. Jake dodged the first punch by inches, feeling the wind from it ruffle his hair. Jake did not try to match Brutus's strength. Instead, he used his speed and the techniques Kane had taught him. He struck at pressure points and weak joints. He moved constantly, never staying in one place long enough for Brutus to pin him down. The fight lasted much longer than anyone expected. Brutus grew frustrated as his attacks missed again and again. Sweat matted his fur, and his breathing became heavy. Jake was tired too, but he had trained for this. Humans could run for hours without stopping. They could fight when their bodies screamed for rest. They could endure. In the 15th minute of combat, Jake saw his chance. Brutus threw a wild punch that left him off balance. Jake slipped under the massive arm and struck 3 quick blows to the Ursine's ribs. Brutus staggered but did not fall. He swung again, and this time his paw caught Jake across the chest, sending him flying into a boulder. Jake hit the stone hard enough to crack. Pain shot through his back and shoulder. For a moment, his vision went black. The arena was silent. Everyone expected him to stay down. Jake forced himself to stand. The crowd murmured in surprise. Even some of the instructors looked impressed. "Impossible," Brutus growled. "You should be broken." "I am still here," Jake said, wiping blood from his mouth. The fight continued. Jake took more punishment, but he kept getting back up. He kept moving. He kept fighting. Finally, after 25 minutes, Brutus made a mistake. He overextended on a charge, and Jake managed to trip him. The massive Ursine crashed to the ground. Before Brutus could rise, Jake was on him, applying a chokehold Kane had taught him. It took all of Jake's strength and leverage, but slowly the giant Ursine went to sleep. "Winner, Jake Martinez," Battlemaster Korth announced. The arena erupted in shocked noise. No one had expected the human to win. Jake had not just survived, he had defeated one of the class's strongest fighters. Jake helped Brutus to his feet when the Ursine regained consciousness. The big cadet looked at him with new respect. "You fight well for prey," Brutus said. "I underestimated you." As Jake walked back to his seat, he noticed that Kral was still watching him. The legendary hunter had not moved during the entire fight. Jake had no idea that his life was about to change forever. Jake sat in the medical bay after his fight with Brutus, trying to process what had happened. His victory felt like a dream. For the first time since arriving at the academy, other cadets looked at him with something other than mockery. Even. Thex had been quiet when Jake returned to their room. The medical machines hummed as they repaired his injuries. His ribs were bruised but not broken. His shoulder was sore but functional. He had taken serious damage, but nothing that would not heal quickly. A soft knock came at the medical bay door. "Come in," Jake called. General Kane entered, followed by someone Jake did not expect. Kral the Endless stepped through the doorway, his imposing armor gleaming under the medical bay lights. Jake tried to stand, but Kane gestured for him to remain seated. "Jake Martinez," Kral said, his mechanical voice filling the small room. "That was an impressive fight." "Thank you, sir," Jake replied, not sure what else to say. "I would like to speak with you privately," Kral continued, "if you are willing." Jake looked at General Kane, who nodded encouragingly. "Of course," Jake said. Kane left the room, closing the door behind him. Jake was alone with the most feared hunter in the galaxy. Kral stood silently for a long moment, as if studying Jake through his dark visor. Then, to Jake's complete shock, the legendary hunter reached up and began to remove his helmet. The helmet came off with a soft hiss of escaping air. Underneath was a face Jake had not expected to see. Human. The man standing before him had dark skin and gray hair. His face was marked with old scars, and his eyes were the color of steel. He looked to be in his 50s, but there was something ageless about him. "My name is Marcus Stone," the man said in a normal human voice. "I left Earth 30 years ago." Jake stared in disbelief. The greatest bounty hunter in the galaxy was human. The being that struck fear into criminals across 1,000 worlds was from the same species everyone called weak. "How is this possible?" Jake whispered. Marcus smiled grimly. "Because everything they tell you about humans is wrong. We are not the weakest species in the galaxy. We are potentially the strongest. But very few people know this." Marcus sat down in the chair across from Jake. "Let me tell you what humans really are," Marcus continued. "We evolved as persistence hunters. We can run farther than any other species without stopping. We can track prey for days. We can go without food and water longer than creatures twice. Our size." Jake listened in amazement as Marcus explained. "Our brains are designed for pattern recognition and problem solving. We can adapt to any environment. We can learn any skill. We can work together in ways that other species cannot imagine." "But we have no claws," Jake said. "No natural armor, no fangs." "We do not need them," Marcus replied. "We have something better. We have tools. We have intelligence. We have the ability to never give up." Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at the academy grounds. 30 years ago, I was like you. Young, angry, tired of being told humans were weak. So I left Earth and made my own way in the galaxy. I learned to use human advantages that other species do not understand." "What advantages?" "Endurance. Adaptability. The ability to think several steps ahead. Most importantly, the refusal to surrender even when everything seems hopeless." Marcus turned back to Jake. "In your fight today, Brutus was stronger than you, faster than you. He had natural weapons you lack, but you won because you outlasted him. You kept getting up when he expected you to stay down. You fought smart instead of fighting hard. Jake thought about the fight. It was true. He had not tried to overpower Brutus. He had worn him down. "Why are you telling me this?" Jake asked. "Because you have potential that even you do not recognize yet. Your instructors see you as weak because they judge you by the standards of other species. But you are not other species. You are human." Marcus began putting his helmet back on. "I am going to offer you something, Jake Martinez. Complete your training here at the academy. Graduate if you can. Then come find me. I will teach you what it really means to be a human warrior." "Why me?" "Because you proved something today that most humans never learn. You proved that our greatest strength is not giving up, even when the odds are impossible, even when everyone expects you to fail." The helmet sealed with another soft hiss. Crawl the Endless was back. "Think about my offer," the mechanical voice said. "But do not think too long. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and it needs more hunters like us." Crawl left the medical bay, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts. Over the next few weeks, everything changed for Jake. Word of his victory over Brutus had spread through the academy. Cadets who had ignored him before now watched him with interest. Some even asked for training advice. Thex was different too. The Vorthak still made cutting remarks, but there was less venom in them. Sometimes Jake caught his roommate watching him with what might have been curiosity. Jake's classes became easier as his confidence grew. His combat scores improved dramatically. He began to understand what Marcus had told him about human advantages. In tactical planning class, he found solutions that other cadets missed. His persistence and pattern recognition helped him see weaknesses in enemy positions that others overlooked. In survival training, he outlasted cadets who were physically stronger. When others gave up, Jake kept going. In team exercises, he learned to coordinate with other species in ways that surprised his instructors. Humans, it seemed, were natural leaders when they understood their own strengths. General Kane continued his secret training sessions, but now he taught Jake more advanced techniques, combat methods that had been developed by human soldiers centuries ago. Fighting styles that used intelligence and adaptability instead of brute force. "You are becoming what humans were always meant to be," Kane told him one night after training. "A warrior who thinks as well as fights." Jake graduated from the academy ranked 5th in his class. Not the highest, but far higher than anyone had expected when he arrived. More importantly, he graduated with the respect of his fellow cadets and instructors. At the graduation ceremony, Battlemaster Korth called Jake to the front of the assembled cadets. "Cadet Martinez," Korth announced, "you have shown that strength comes in many forms. You have earned your place among the galaxy's defenders." Jake looked out at the crowd of graduating cadets. Brutus gave him a respectful nod. Even some of the Vorthak seemed impressed. But Jake's eyes found Crawl in the audience. The legendary hunter had returned for graduation day. Through his dark visor, Jake thought he could sense approval. After the ceremony, Jake found a message on his personal communicator. It contained coordinates to a space station in the outer rim and a simple note. "Ready to learn what humans can really do? Come alone. Bring everything you own. Your new life starts now." Marcus. Jake looked around the academy one last time. This place had changed him from a mocked outsider into a warrior, but he knew his real journey was just beginning. He packed his few belongings and booked passage on a freight ship heading to the outer rim. It was time to find out what it truly meant to be human. The space station on the coordinates was old and nearly abandoned. Jake found it floating in the darkness between star systems, far from any major trade routes. Only a few ships were docked at its rusted ports. Jake's transport captain was nervous about stopping here. "You sure this is where you want to go, kid?" the grizzled pilot asked. "This place gives me the creeps. Nothing good happens this far from civilization." "I am sure," Jake replied, gathering his bags. The station's docking bay was dimly lit and smelled of old metal and recycled air. Jake was the only passenger who got off. As his transport ship pulled away, he felt very alone. Jake Martinez, Jake, turned to see Marcus Stone approaching from the shadows. He was not wearing his Kral armor now, just simple clothes that made him look like any other spacer, but his eyes still had that steel gray intensity. "You came," Marcus said. "Good. I was. Not sure you would. I gave you my word," Jake replied. Marcus smiled and led Jake deeper into the station. They walked through empty corridors and past abandoned shops. The few people they saw looked like they were hiding from something. "This station serves a specific purpose," Marcus explained as they walked. "It is a meeting place for people who do not want to be found, smugglers, information brokers, and hunters like us." They stopped at a heavy door marked with warning signs in several galactic languages. Marcus placed his hand on a scanner, and the door slid open. Inside was a fully equipped command center. Multiple screens showed star charts, ship movements, and criminal databases. Weapons racks lined the walls. Advanced computers hummed quietly in the background. "Welcome to my real office," Marcus said. "This is where Kral the Endless plans his hunts." Jake looked around in amazement. The technology here was more advanced than anything he had seen at the academy. "Your first lesson starts now," Marcus said, activating one of the large screens. "We have a job." The screen showed a red-skinned alien with multiple scars across his face. The creature looked mean and dangerous. "Meet Vex Shadowclaw," Marcus said. "He leads a group called the Crimson Fleet. They have been raiding trade ships in the outer colonies for 6 months. Jake studied the image. Vex was a Vorthak, like his former roommate Thex, but larger and more heavily muscled. "Local authorities cannot catch him," Marcus continued. "His ships are fast, and he knows the asteroid fields better than anyone. The Galactic Commerce Guild is offering a significant reward for his capture." Marcus activated another screen showing star charts and ship movements. "This is not just about money," Marcus explained. "Vex and his crew have killed hundreds of innocent people. Families trying to make a living on the frontier. Children traveling with their parents." Jake felt anger building in his chest. These were the kind of criminals the Academy trained defenders to stop. "How do we find them?" Jake asked. "That is your first lesson in thinking like a human hunter," Marcus replied. "Other species try to catch pirates by being faster or stronger. Humans catch them by being smarter." Over the next 3 days, Marcus taught Jake how to analyze patterns. They studied the Crimson Fleet's attacks, looking for things other hunters had missed. "Look at the timing," Marcus said, pointing to a timeline on the screen. "Vex attacks every 12 to 15 days. Why that pattern?" Jake studied the data carefully. "Supplies," Jake said finally. "They need time to sell what they steal and resupply their ships." "Good. Now look at the locations." Jake examined the star chart showing attack sites. "They stay within 2 days' travel of the Broken Rings asteroid field," Jake observed. "Excellent. That tells us where their base is, but knowing where they are is not enough. We need to get close without being detected." Marcus began teaching Jake advanced infiltration techniques. How to move silently in zero gravity. How to disable ship systems without triggering alarms. How to use an enemy's expectations against them. "Vorthak are strong and aggressive," Marcus explained. "They expect enemies to fight them directly. They do not expect humans to be patient and clever." After a week of training, Marcus declared Jake ready for his first real hunt. They took Marcus's ship, a sleek vessel that looked ordinary on the outside but was packed with advanced systems. Jake learned that Marcus had modified it extensively over the years. "This ship can outrun most military vessels," Marcus explained as they traveled toward the Broken Rings. "It can also hide from most sensors when we need to be invisible." The Broken Rings were the remains of an ancient planet that had been destroyed in some long-ago war. Thousands of asteroids drifted in complex patterns, creating a maze that only experienced pilots could navigate. "Perfect place for a pirate base," Jake observed. "That is what everyone thinks," Marcus agreed. But Vex is smarter than most pirates. His base will not be where people expect it. They spent 2 days searching the asteroid field using passive sensors to avoid detection. Jake learned to read the subtle signs that indicated recent ship activity. On the 3rd day, they found it. "There," Jake said, pointing to a sensor reading. "That asteroid has been hollowed out. The metal content is wrong for natural formation." Marcus smiled with approval. "Very good. Now we need to get inside without starting a war." They landed their ship on a nearby asteroid and suited up for a spacewalk. Marcus had brought special equipment that would let them cross the vacuum between asteroids. Undetected, the journey took 4 hours, moving carefully from rock to rock. Jake discovered that his human endurance was useful in space as well as on planets. He could work longer in a spacesuit than most species without getting tired. The pirate base was larger than Jake had expected. Multiple ships were docked inside the hollowed asteroid. He counted at least 50 crew members moving around the installation. "How do we capture all of them?" Jake whispered over the comm system. "We do not," Marcus replied. "We capture their leader and make the rest surrender, cut off the head and the body dies." They found an access port on the asteroid's surface. Marcus produced tools that opened the sealed hatch without triggering any alarms. Inside, they moved through maintenance tunnels that the pirates had not bothered to guard. Marcus had studied the base's layout from their external observations and knew exactly where to go. "Vex will be in the command center," Marcus explained. "Pirates like him need to control everything personally. They do not trust subordinates. They reached the command center after an hour of careful movement. Through a ventilation grate, Jake could see Vex Shadowclaw sitting at a large control console. The Vorthak was even bigger in person, with claws that looked like they could cut through metal. 2 other pirates stood guard near the entrance. "How do we get past the guards?" Jake asked. Marcus handed him a small device. "We do not. We make them come to us." Marcus activated the device, and alarms began sounding throughout the base. But these were not security alarms. They were fire suppression. Alerts from the engine room. "Emergency in engine section," one of the guards reported to Vex. "Looks like a coolant leak," Vex growled in annoyance. "Take a team and fix it," he ordered. "I do not want my base exploding." The guards and most of the other crew members hurried toward the engine room, leaving Vex alone in the command center. "Now," Marcus whispered. They dropped through the ventilation grate and landed silently behind Vex's chair. The Vorthak was focused on his screens and did not notice them. Marcus placed a weapon against the back of Vex's head. "Do not move," Marcus said calmly. Vex started to spin around, but Jake had already moved to block his escape route. "Kral the Endless," Vex said, recognizing the voice. "I should have known." "You should have stayed in legal work," Marcus replied. Vex's eyes fixed on Jake. "And who is this little creature? Your pet?" "My partner," Marcus said simply. Vex laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "A human partnership. How amusing. I will enjoy killing you both." The Vorthak moved faster than Jake expected, spinning out of his chair and striking at Marcus with claws extended. But Marcus was ready. He ducked under the attack and struck Vex in the throat with precise force. Vex staggered but did not go down. He swung again, this time at Jake. Jake remembered his training. He did not try to block the powerful claws. Instead, he moved aside and struck at the nerve clusters Marcus had taught him about. Vex's arm went numb. The fight lasted 3 minutes. Vex was strong and experienced, but he was fighting 2 opponents who worked together perfectly. Marcus and Jake moved like they had been partners for years, each covering the other's attacks. Finally, Jake managed to get behind Vex and apply a chokehold while Marcus disabled the Vorthak's legs with pressure point strikes. Vex went to sleep. When the other pirates returned from the false emergency, they found their leader unconscious and 2 humans waiting for them. "Your choice," Marcus announced to the assembled criminals. "Surrender peacefully, or we can do this the hard way." Looking at their defeated leader, the pirates chose surrender. 3 days later, Jake and Marcus delivered Vex Shadowclaw and his entire crew to Galactic Authority forces. The reward was substantial, but Jake found that the money mattered less than the knowledge that dangerous criminals were off the streets. "How do you feel?" Marcus asked as they watched the prisoners being loaded onto a prison transport. "Different," Jake replied. "Like I understand something about myself that I never knew before." Marcus nodded. "You are beginning to see what humans can accomplish when they stop trying to be something else. This was your first hunt, but it will not be your last." Jake looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were other criminals who thought they were safe. Other people who needed protection. He was ready to hunt again. News of Vex Shadowclaw's capture spread quickly through the criminal underworld. Within days, Marcus and Jake were receiving messages from across the galaxy. Some were job offers from governments and corporations. Others were threats from criminal organizations. "This is what success looks like in our business," Marcus explained as they reviewed the communications aboard his ship. "Half the galaxy wants to hire us. The other half wants us dead." Jake was still getting used to his new life. A month ago, he had been a struggling cadet. Now he was a partner to the most feared bounty hunter in known space. "Are you having second thoughts?" Marcus asked, noticing Jake's quiet mood. "No," Jake replied. "I just keep thinking about the academy, about all the cadets who still think humans are weak." Marcus smiled. "Word travels fast in military circles. By now, everyone at the academy knows that Kral the Endless has a human partner. They will figure out the rest eventually." Their ship's communication system chimed with an incoming message. Marcus activated the display and General Kane's face appeared on the screen. "Marcus," Kane said with a slight smile, "I heard you picked up some help." "David," Marcus replied. "Good to see you again." Jake realized that Kane and Marcus knew each other well. There was an easy familiarity between them that spoke of old friendship. "Jake has been asking questions about you," Kane continued. "I thought you might want to answer them yourself." Marcus looked at Jake. "What do you want to know?" "How many of us are there?" Jake asked. "How many humans like you?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "More than you might think. Fewer than there should be. When I left Earth 30 years ago, I was not the only one. Dozens of humans scattered across the galaxy, tired of being seen as weak. Some became bounty hunters like me. Others joined mercenary companies or started their own businesses." Kane leaned forward on the screen. "The point is, Jake, you are not alone. There is a network of humans out here who understand what our species is capable of. We stay in contact. We help each other when needed." "Why do you not work together openly?" Jake asked. "Because our strength comes partly from being underestimated," Marcus explained. "If the galaxy knew how many capable humans were out there, they might start seeing us as a threat instead of just ignoring us." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alarm. Marcus quickly switched to the ship's sensor display. 3. "Ship's approaching fast," Marcus announced. "Configuration suggests Kythera attack vessels." Jake felt his pulse quicken. The insect-like Kythera built some of the fastest ships in the galaxy. "Friends of Vex Shadowclaw?" Jake asked. "Probably," Marcus replied, already moving toward the pilot's seat. "The Crimson Fleet had allies. Some of them are not happy about losing their business partner. The attacking ships were sleek and deadly, designed for hit-and-run tactics. They opened fire as soon as they came into range. Marcus's ship shook under the impact of energy weapons. "Can we outrun them?" Jake asked, strapping himself into the co-pilot's seat. "Not in open space," Marcus replied. "But we do not need to outrun them. We need to outsmart them." Marcus changed course toward a nearby nebula, a cloud of gas and dust that would interfere with sensors and targeting systems. "Kythera rely on their speed and precision," Marcus explained as he piloted the ship through the colorful gases. In the nebula, those advantages are reduced. The pursuing ships followed them into the nebula but had to slow down to avoid collisions with debris. "Now we hunt them," Marcus said. Jake watched in amazement as Marcus used the nebula's properties to their advantage. He hid their ship behind dense gas clouds, used metallic particles to confuse enemy sensors, and moved in ways that the faster ships could not match. One by one, they disabled the attacking vessels. Marcus used precise shots to knock out engines and weapon systems without destroying the ships completely. "Why not just destroy them?" Jake asked. "Because we are hunters, not killers," Marcus replied. "We stop threats, but we do not murder people, if we can avoid it." When the fight was over, all 3 Kythera ships were drifting helplessly in space. Marcus contacted the local authorities to pick up the disabled vessels and their crews. "That was incredible," Jake said as they left the nebula. "I have never seen anyone fly like that." "You will learn," Marcus said. "Humans make excellent pilots when they understand that flying is not about speed or power. It is about thinking faster than your opponent." Over the next few months, Jake's education continued. Marcus taught him advanced combat techniques, investigation, methods, and the complex politics of galactic law enforcement. Jake learned that being a bounty hunter was not just about fighting. It required research, patience, and careful planning. Many cases were solved through clever detective work, rather than combat. He also learned about the network of humans that Marcus had mentioned. They met with other human operators throughout the galaxy. Some were bounty hunters like them. Others were merchant captains, explorers, or specialists in various fields. All of them shared the same basic philosophy. Humans succeeded by being smart, persistent, and adaptable, rather than by trying to match other species in their areas of natural strength. One day, Marcus made an announcement that surprised Jake. "We are going back to the academy," Marcus said. "Why?" "Because it is time for you to receive something you have earned." They arrived at the Galactic Defense Academy during graduation week for the new class. Jake felt strange returning to the place where he had been mocked and dismissed just over a year ago. Battlemaster Korth met them at the landing platform. The massive Ursine looked at Jake with obvious respect. "Cadet Martinez," Korth said. "Or should I say, Hunter Martinez?" "Jake is fine," Jake replied. They walked through the academy grounds toward the main auditorium. Jake noticed that other cadets were staring at them. Word had spread that Kral the Endless and his human partner were visiting. In the auditorium, Jake was surprised to see many familiar faces. Brutus was there, now graduated and serving as an instructor. Thex was present as, well, having completed his own training, General Kane stood at the podium and called for attention. "Today we have a special presentation," Kane announced. "Jake Martinez left this academy as a new graduate. He returns as an accomplished hunter who has proven that strength comes in many forms." Kane gestured to Marcus, who stepped forward carrying a case. "Kral the Endless has requested permission to formally recognize his partner," Kane continued. Marcus opened the case, revealing a set of armor similar to his own, but designed for Jake's smaller frame. The armor was sleek and functional, with systems Jake recognized from his months of training. "This armor marks you as a true hunter," Marcus said as he presented it to Jake. "More importantly, it marks you as my brother in arms." Jake accepted. The armor with hands that trembled slightly. The weight of it felt right, like something he had been waiting for his whole life. "There is something else," Marcus announced to the assembled crowd. "Jake Martinez is not just my partner, he is my heir. If anything happens to me, he will carry on the legend of Kral the Endless." The auditorium was completely silent. Even the instructors looked shocked. Thex stood up from his seat. "I owe you an apology," the Vorthak said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I was wrong about humans. I was wrong about you." Other cadets began to applaud. Soon the entire auditorium was on its feet, showing respect for the human who had proven them all wrong. After the ceremony, Jake put on his new armor for the first time. It fit perfectly and felt like a second skin. "How does it feel?" Marcus asked. "Like coming home," Jake replied. They left the academy together, walking toward their ship. Jake noticed that the other cadets stepped aside respectfully as they passed. "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now we hunt," Marcus said. "The galaxy is full of criminals who think they are safe. We will show them they are wrong." Together. Together. As brothers. As humans. Their ship lifted off from the academy landing platform and headed for the stars. Behind them, Jake could see cadets gathered at the windows, watching them leave. Jake Martinez had begun his journey at the academy as a mocked outcast. He was ending it as a legend, but more importantly, he had discovered what it truly meant to be human. Not weak, not prey, but something far more dangerous. A hunter who never gave up. The galaxy would learn to fear and respect the name Jake Martinez. But they would also learn something else. Humanity was not the weakest species in the galaxy. They were just getting started. As their ship disappeared into the void between stars, two human hunters continued their mission. Protecting the innocent, stopping the guilty, and proving that the most dangerous predator in the galaxy was one that never stopped thinking, never stopped adapting, never stopped hunting. The legend of the human hunters had begun.